Oh, it's been said a bard's life can often be a hard life, or hill and dale to rove and always move from town to town. And some folk have inquired if ever we grow tired of ranging all around the world and never settling down.
But one should be a little wary of remaining stationary, 'cause comfortable is lovely, but it's not the way we grow. When life starts to unravel, pick up your pack and travel. You'll find a strange serenity in places you don't know. Wriggle-dee-dum-dee-doo-rat-terry-o-dee. There's so much to see beyond the open door. It's outward bound we go. Who knows what we'll find that we've never found before. Adventures waiting further down the road. It's waiting for you further down the road. You've got no map for showing which direction you are going.
But why start on a journey if you know where it will end?
And once you recognize,
to anticipate surprise, you'll relish every twist and turn that lies around the bend. Wriggle-dee-dum-dee-doo-rat-terry-o-dee-da-dee-da-dee. There's so much to see beyond the open door. It's outward bound we go. Who knows what we'll find that we've never found before. Adventures waiting further down the road. It's waiting for you further down the road. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. The world has got its demons. There are many reasons why you'd find it harder to be brave than be afraid. But every life could use some danger. Every friend was once a stranger. Ships are safe in harbor, but that's not why ships are made.
Wriggle-dee-dum-dee-doo-rat-terry-o-dee. Dee, a fwit-dee-dee-dee-dee. There's so much to see beyond the open door. It's outward bound we go. Who knows what we'll find that we've never found before. Adventures waiting further down the road. It's waiting for you further down the road. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Adventures waiting further down the road. Let's go! Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-da-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-da-da-lie-da-lie.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Gothic Horror Gaming. I'm your host, the Gloom Master, Tom Zadoyko, and I also have with me Handler Z, Mel Z, and the Baby Bat. They are here as well.
Hello.
Hello, friends. Before we get going too far, I just want to let everybody know this is not our normal gaming session. We're taking a break. We just wrapped up an adventure, but we are going to be talking about that adventure, how it was made, maybe some things the players might have missed, um, maybe some ideas for new adventures. But do want to let you know that this is based on horror gaming. So anybody who is new, there is going to be things mentioned about violence, gore, creatures of common phobia, that sort of thing. So some adult content can sneak its way in there.
Yeah.
Particularly,
When I cut loose, I tend to get a little sweary, so I apologize in advance if that comes up, but it does
I mean,
happen.
and particularly, not even necessarily language-wise, but content-wise, it can get pretty heady, sophisticated, and maybe not for kids. But if that is your cup of tea, then you're in the right place.
For
Really quick shout out
glass
to
of
all of our
non-alcoholic beer. Sorry.
yes. You have the non-alcoholic. I have
I
the
do.
alcoholic beer in my
Yay.
Miskatonic University Go Pods, home of the Fighting Cephalopods mug. My 24-ounce mug here.
That thing is huge.
Yes, it is. I actually got this many moons ago in Salem, Massachusetts.
Ooh.
When I was up there at a bookstore, had them there.
Nice.
But I do want to thank our sponsors really quick before we get too far along. First of all, rentadventures.com. As per usual, our perennial sponsors, rentadventures.com. They are the next thing we're doing is a Dungeons and Dragons tour in New Orleans from the 5th to the 9th of December. I will be one of the game masters, I believe,
Yes,
as
I
will
think so.
several other people that you have seen around.
Yeah, and a lot of people are there for the Louisiana Renaissance Fair, and it's people you've seen on the channel before, like Katie or sorry, should be specific. Katie Hauser from Chase Treasure, or Maddie from Chase Treasure.
Paulo Garbanzo himself will be
Yes.
there.
Dan Kostelik.
Dan
who's
Kostelik,
from-
Shakespeare Proves will be there.
Yep.
I'll be there. There might be some other faces that you recognize throughout. We're finalizing exactly who's going to be there, but so check that out. Runadventures.com. Be sure to get tickets now. It's going to culminate in a trip to the Renaissance Fair, then, which is just right up the road. I can't really announce too much, but there is some exciting stuff for next year at runadventures.com. So keep looking for that. We're hammering out the final details for next year's Run Adventure tours, Dungeons and Dragons tours. So keep watching that space. We also like to thank 3d2u.org, our good friends over there, Amy and Jesse.
Yay.
They make all sorts of gaming accessories, dice towers, dice trays, journals, that sort of thing. And Amy just started her new job as a teacher. So she's teaching molecular biology.
Yeah, I was going to say she's teaching science at a high school, I believe.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And of course, ourselves, we like to thank us.
Yay.
There is,
cool.
we've got Dare. It's a collection of short fiction and poetry written by Melzy and Baby Bat. We're right over there. Actually, they were written before Baby Bat was around, but
Yes.
and I do the narration on the audiobook. You can find it at Amazon and on Audible. Go ahead and check that out there.
You can also check out a number of other titles by Zadoiko over here. So if you would like to, if you don't even like spooky stuff, but you want to read a really cool story about what was that, Mud?
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was a good one. It was
I
about
narrated
a golem.
one called Mud, which is about a golem in a
Yeah.
fantasy world.
And First Fixer was another one that was really good too.
That was an orc who was transported to West Virginia, our West Virginia, from his fantasy world, along with his whole tribe, and they are trying to fit in by being construction workers. That was a fun one too. So to answer Sir David Percival's question, maybe a Gothic Horror Gaming London trip in the future. Not this coming year, but let's just say people from this channel might be going places next year.
Some
again,
of us.
We're hammering out the details, so hopefully I'll be able to make more of an announcement next week on that.
Some of us will still have an infant.
Yes, Handler Z will have
I
the
can definitively declare that the first family trip that we're going to take will be in probably Louisiana in 2024. So prior to that, Baby Bat might make an appearance at the end of the Pennsylvania Fair, depending on how they're feeling and how I'm feeling. But generally speaking, they're going to be pretty much stationed in our home base most of the time. And we're just going to trade out who's the primary care parent at that time.
excuse me. So what I wanted to do tonight was to open it up to all of you guys. If you had any questions about the adventure we just did, I think everybody who's watching this stream right now was around. It was set in the Philippines, October 1936. They went to find the corpse of Magellan and get a silver key off of it, on the behest of Gordon Pym, the leader of SAVE, for reasons unknown. When they did get the key finally and escape and manage to make their way back to Darwin in Australia with it, Pym immediately used it to lock a box and then melted down and destroyed the key.
Yes. Which I thought was a very interesting touch. I appreciate
with no
that.
further explanation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any questions, feel free to put it over in the chat. I thought maybe you would like to see my notes just in general for the game. Here they are. This is literally all of them on this one piece of paper.
He's mentally prepared, but not writing down prepared. It scares me.
I
can't do
I
it that
ran
way.
the entire game with this one sheet of paper and my spare monitor, where I was constantly going to Wikipedia and stuff as we went. I mean, I had done some of that beforehand, but while we were actually playing, I was also constantly referencing in that to make sure I got that thing. Sir David Percival, was the box that Pym locked derived from Pandora's box?
Just as a concept.
So when I created the adventure, the silver key was a MacGuffin. If you're familiar with what a MacGuffin is in filmmaking and all that, it's basically the thing that's there to give the excuse for the action to happen.
Like that's the Maltese Falcon, right? That's the whole setting of.
Yes,
they're looking for a falcon. That's the point.
Yeah, you're looking for the Maltese Falcon. What is the Maltese Falcon? It's nothing. It's just this thing. A perfect example is Marcellus Wallace's suitcase from Pulp Fiction.
Mm-hmm.
You never even know what's in there.
Yeah.
You never need to, because that's not what's important. The object itself isn't important. So I created the idea of this box that Pym needed the key to lock. And I wanted to make it ambiguous and vague so that it can be whatever we want it to be.
Yeah.
And maybe in the future that will be revealed. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know what was in the box. I didn't have a preset notion as to what's in the box. I just thought it was a very neat concept that, for a change, because most of our adventures here have been something terrible is happening, find out what it is and stop it.
Yeah. A lot of ours have been pretty straightforward, including the Gothic, including the Delta Green stuff too. It's like, we're going to do this thing. We've accomplished this mission and now it's done.
Right. So rather than that, I wanted to create, no, Pym is sending out experienced people to do a thing, and he's not explaining why. He just needs this done. So that was, that's what it was. Jay Rinker is asking over in the side, as far as Alfred Hitchcock coined MacGuffin, I don't know. I know it's an old film term. Somebody with a little more time to look on a spare monitor screen could go ahead and look that up.
Okay.
Where the term MacGuffin came from. But your other question, is that where Magellan, his corpse, really ended up? No one knows 100%. Magellan's corpse was never actually found. He was slain on Mactan Island. it was very it was a very weird scenario. Um, Magellan made it to all the way around, made it to the Philippines, decided to impress the locals, wowed this one local nation, chieftain, tribe, whatever, um, and converted them to Christianity. Converted them. He was there for a couple weeks. He didn't really convert them, but he kind of convinced them to do it. And then that tribe that he converted, they were in conflict with another tribe on a different island. They were at war with that other tribe, and Magellan basically said, "I'll take care of that for you, and I'm just going to go do it. I don't need your help. We're my God is going to lead me on to victory. This is going to be great." And a lot of his sailors were like, "This sounds like a terrible idea." So he only took volunteers, which were not that many of them, and he went to go attack this other tribe. Um, he attacked at the wrong time of day, even though he was told not to, and he got stuck on a sandbar really far from shore. They had to wade ashore. They thought that the natives could be overawed and frightened by them. They weren't. Like initially, there was a brief period of shock, and then they totally got over that and went, "Oh no, these are just guys. We can kill them." And so they fought back. Magellan was last seen. He went down on the beach. He was shot with some arrows and spears and stuff, and then he went down in the rush. And they lost track of the body, and no one knows where his body actually ended up. So that's the story of Magellan. It was very much hubris that killed him, but he died on that beach, which is where they first go in the adventure that we wrote. That they went to Mactan Island and found a couple of conquistadors in a cave on Mactan Island. That cave is real, and it is on Mactan Island. Mactan Island.
I wanted to show you. I really love the visual that we found for the conquistador. I was like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah.
I was so proud of that.
Made me but that cave that I showed a picture of, this is let me pull it back up.
That one?
Yes, that is a very real place on Mactan Island that you can apparently go to. I just decided that'd be a really cool place for the corpses of the Spaniards to be. And then for our game, I decided that that there was such a hatred for the colonizers that the witch doctor would steal the body out of there and take it to yet a different island. There is no actual historical correlation there. I just thought it would be interesting to have them have to track down that sorcerer, the Mamba Barang, which is a real Philippine folklore cryptid. Really, it's a sorcerer who deals in bugs. That is their primary thing. One of their main modes of operation is to get hairs from their victim and tie it around the bug, and then release the bug, and then the bugs manifest in the body of the person from whose hair it was. The bugs themselves that the sorcerer has are not actually bugs. They're evil spirits that are in the shape of bugs, but then the bug, like actual physical bugs, then manifest in the victim. And that's an actual Philippine folklore tale. Bukalat Cave. That's that picture that was there.
Oh, this is super disturbing. I did find out that the MacGuffin is an object or device in a movie or a book that serves merely as a trigger for the plot. The origin is from the 1930s. It is a Scottish surname, but it was coined in this sense by the English film director Alfred Hitchcock, allegedly from a humorous story involving such a pivotal factor.
Well, there you go.
That's according to dictionary.com.
We had a delightful place at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair. They had built a stage for a period of time that they called the MacGuffin stage. which is like where their Boar's Head, where their pirate brawl happened,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. So that was a very deliberately tongue-in-cheek named stage. It no longer exists, but it was called the MacGuffin stage for that very reason.
That was fun for the moment. I'm glad that they rebuilt. We're both working in Pennsylvania right now, so I'm glad that they rebuilt the Boar's Head and made it a more solidified stunt performing stage. I think I've seen at least the rehearsals of some of the stunt shows, and I would love to go see that. I think it would be very fun.
But yeah, so that was basically the game, the creation of the game in my mind. I then added, I thought that them just going to find something would be not really enough impetus, which is why I threw in the shady Samoans who were chasing them.
Which, to my mind, by the way, every time someone brought up the shady Samoans, I just thought of like Dwayne Johnson and eyeliner. Like that's my thing. It's just like, oh, because he's the only like I know that there are a number of other Samoans, obviously, but he is of Samoan descent, and I just kept and you kept describing them as being huge because they're all. I mean, there a lot of Samoan people are very large and very muscular and very
broad.
just broad people. Yes. So every time you brought that up, I was like, oh my God, Dwayne Johnson coming after them again. No.
Well, I decided to add a cult that was chasing them around. And I decided that this cult was chasing them because they were after the silver key as well. But I thought they don't know. I thought the cult now doesn't know where it is.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, they are going to follow our heroes until they find it, and then try to bushwhack them and take it after they get it.
Yeah.
The players sort of foiled that by attacking one of the people who was tailing them.
Oh my goodness. And stole his car.
And then they stole the car, which I determined then. Well, I was like, well, there's no way this cult's going to catch up to them
Now.
in enough time now when they have a plane, when the party has a plane, and the cultists were following around in more conventional means, or having to charter planes. So that kind of threw that idea out the window for me then.
We're going to talk a minute about the plane because that was a whole thing. So sorry, go ahead.
Well, let me wrap up this thought real quick. This is in my head about the cult. So originally in my mind, it was going to be they were going to get the key without too much difficulty, and then the main climax was going to be the cult trying to get it from them. But because of what they did, I was like, well, I can't have the cult there now. It makes no sense anymore. How did they catch up?
Right.
So as a result, I had to make their encounter to get the key, the climax, therefore make that harder, which is where our fecal golem comes from.
That was okay. We did not discuss that in advance. And then suddenly there's a poop monster. And I was
I wasn't going to have one. And as we're going along, I'm like, oh, I need something. Because originally in my mind, it was going to be basically a golem made out of beetles.
Which would have been cool. Like
a giant assembly.
Yeah.
But in order to make that work in my mind, the witch doctor would have needed some hair of them. Which is what the traps were for at the shack on the beach. I was hoping that one of them would fall in, and then the idea was the witch doctor would circle back later and get some of their hair, and then make, sick the beetles on them that way. But they got around that, so I'm like, okay, well, what's he going to do? Well, he's making an improvised spell, and that's when he creates the poop golem. And the brazier, in my mind, the brazier that he was using to make the spell, he hadn't finished the spell yet, so he had formed it, but he hadn't unleashed it yet, which is why he then threw it at Ryan's character, at Speedy Boyle, because he came around. He was the first one to come around the corner, and he just went and hit him with it, and that's why I decided that then the golem would chase him around. So there's all of that. That was what was going through my
Right.
mind when we
Okay, but
created it.
why centuries of poop that then get turned, like, is it just the entirety of the Philippines have gradually visited this island to poop on Magellan's corpse? Where did that come from?
Um, I again, with the idea of the Mabambarang sorcerer, was that there in my head there's been generations of them, and they took it upon themselves to defile the corpse of Magellan to keep him in their minds in eternal torment for being the colonizer that he was. I mean, he didn't succeed in the Philippines, but he kind of like paved the way for more to come.
Yeah, there were a lot of Spanish invaders eventually that took over the Philippines.
Right. So my thought was that they developed this great animosity toward him, even though he was dead, and so they stole the corpse and were doing whatever horrible things they could think of to his corpse for the past, 400 years. So it wasn't like a whole bunch of people would come in and do this. It was just like in my mind, it was just one Mabambarang at a time throughout generations. Like the current Mabambarang would go find an apprentice, an acolyte, train them, but then also teach them
The
we
ways
do
of pooping on Magellan's corpse, yes.
this is we want this guy to be in eternal torment, and that's just one of the ways. You might have recalled that I also mentioned that like there were things inscribed on his
Oh,
bones,
sure,
and
yeah.
there were stakes through the eyes and nose and stuff like that. That was all. The whole idea was that it was all punishment. That they were trying to put eternal suffering on Magellan. So that's where that came from.
Okay. Like, just the things that came up into my brain while all of that was happening. I was like, is this like it's like a legacy dung heap? Like, what's going on here?
The way I was thinking was that they kind of did it like, ceremonially. Like it wasn't just their outhouse. No, 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 no. They were doing this very deliberately, very specifically to desecrate this corpse.
Yes. It's just it's just that it's time for now come acolyte. It's time for you to ceremoniously poop on Magellan.
Yep,
Like,
exactly, exactly. That's
I love it.
exactly what I was
I
thinking.
love it. I love it. Okay. So this plane.
Oh, the plane.
Okay, now keep in mind it is 10 p.m. I'm in Maine. I am driving through Maine and I'm tired. So I call my husband to talk to me while I continue to drive so that I can stay awake and concentrate without at this point I've gone through a bunch of podcasts, I've gone through music. I'm kind of done. So for as long as possible, he's keeping me awake. And he then tells me about this plane.
Well, not just this plane,
Yes.
but I went through lists and lists of sea and float planes.
Mm-hmm.
I found a website that had every sea and float plane that has ever been recorded listed alphabetically.
Every plane that exists.
And so I was going through the list because Ryan, playing Speedy Pete Boyle, Boyd, not Boyle, Boyd, he said, "Oh, if we're setting it, in the Philippines and all that stuff, I want to be." He originally thought he was going to be a boat captain. Then he's like, "Well, what about a flying boat or a float boat kind of pilot?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I love this idea because the whole idea of it to me was all very Indiana Jones from the very inception is kind of
Yes.
what I wanted. So I'm like, yeah, that's great. But then I was like, well, I could just make up a plane, but I'm like, no, it would be really neat to have an actual plane. So for a number of hours while Mel was driving to Maine from Pennsylvania, I was on the phone with her talking through all of the plane entries I could find, saying,
Yes.
"Hey, do you think this works?"
And it had very specific specifications. It had to have been made prior to 1936. They had to have made more than one because there were a number of planes that only had like 5 total ever made or
Or like a
7 total.
prototype or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So it had to be made prior to 1936 and in significant use. Had more than one of those planes been made, and it had to be able to have enough passengers that all of the players could get into the plane at the same time. If it had too many passengers, like if it was a 12-seater, it would be like too large. But if it only had like a 2-seater, so there's the pilot and one other person, then we don't have enough space for the people.
A number of them were open cockpitted biplanes, and I'm like, well, that's not going to really work for what we're trying to do. I It was funny because the players were making these references, and I almost included them, but they were making Tailspin references.
Yeah.
I don't know if you all remember the
I love that
Tailspin
show.
stuff.
Yeah.
That was
So good.
also very much in my mind when I was creating this adventure. Was Tailspin meets Indiana Jones, but now add horror to it instead.
Yeah.
So that was the idea. The germination of this entire adventure was that thought.
But I think
Um,
it came across very, very unique.
yeah, I wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
Yes, no spruce goose, just a little big. Um, I thought about the Catalina PBYs, which saw a lot of service in World War II as flying boats. They did a lot of anti-submarine. They did a lot of rescue of downed airmen from the aircraft carriers, scouting for enemy fleets and all that stuff. But they were just a little too big, and also the PBYs were almost exclusively a military craft, and I could not justify in my head how this rogue pilot had one. Like,
Yeah.
how would he have one of those? But the one that we did find, again, I'll show it to you again. Um,
Is a real plane.
it's a real plane. It was and is still flying. Um, I mean, maybe not that specific one, but they are still flying. They use them up in Alaska through all the various lakes and everything, and along the coast in Alaska. They use them in Hawaii. They were the original planes of Hawaiian Airlines.
Yeah, and they delivered mail too, if I remember
Oh
the
yeah.
research correctly.
So they were used extensively, and there were a lot of them made, and there are still some out there flying to this very day. So once I stumbled across it, I was like, oh, that's absolutely perfect.
I remind you of the what? Oh, from Baloo. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so funny. I'm glad that I remind you of a bear with very nice hair. That makes me happy. That was I used to watch that show all the time.
Oh,
I
not
wasn't as
everybody
into
can
it.
see. I just realized that
Oh,
Jay
sorry.
Jay is showing it from is on YouTube. So sometimes
Right.
YouTube and Twitch can't
They
see
don't talk.
each
Yeah.
other's comments. But
I think her name was Rebecca. I thought it was Rebecca. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there, but I thought it was Rebecca. And she ran the company that Baloo flew for.
right.
So, although we've had many deep conversations about Don Carnage in the past.
Which I almost made a character show up with that.
Yep.
And then I felt like that would be too forced. I was going to have Danny Cortege show up. In fact, there it is in my notes, Danny Cortege.
Danny Cortege.
I was like, oh, can I bring him in? And I was going to have him have an accent and everything. And then I was like, that seemed like it would be shoehorning that in out of place.
Just putting Hondo Naka into everything.
Right, who is essentially the same thing.
I think it's the same voice actor. I think it's what's his name? That does everything. Who also does Winnie the Pooh and all of that. You know who I'm talking about.
Yes. Alan.
No. Okay. Hang on. I'm gonna look this up.
Maybe we're not talking about the same one. All right, go ahead and look him up.
Jim Cummings.
Jim Cummings. I wanted to say Alan Cummings, and that's wrong.
Yes.
It's a different guy. Jim Cummings. That's who.
Yes.
Is he Hondo as well?
He might not be anymore. Let me see if I can let me look that up.
But he was Don Carnage?
Uh-huh.
All right. Is he also?
He is also Hondo Onaka.
That makes perfect sense. Because he's essentially the same character.
Exactly the same character. It's the same accent.
Well, one
Carnage is a little bit more French.
and Carnage is a little bit more of a villain.
Yes.
Whereas Honda's just kind of like his own thing. He's off on his own.
Yeah. I thought I am very good. One of my things, not intentionally, but I am very good at picking up voices. So if I hear a song and I can say, "Oh man, yeah, I've heard someone else. I've heard this person in a different band, or I've heard this person singing along with something else too." I'm really good with stuff like that, and that includes voice actors as well. So yeah, I don't know every single Jim Cummings character, but I know a lot of them.
I missed this. I'm looking back through the comments, and I missed this when this popped up.
Yes.
That's a Ferdinand Magellan. Very fun.
That was when you introduced the poop golem in the stream, everyone started making those comments. Like, oh, it's the poop golem. Oh god. It was awesome. That everyone had a great name for that character, but I think that was the best, was Ferdinand Magellan. I was very impressed.
Going back to Ferdinand Magellan.
Okay.
Since we've drifted back there a little bit.
Look.
There is a book. If some people were asking, is that where he actually died and all that? There is a fantastic book called A World Lit Only by Fire.
Yes, you've mentioned this before. To me.
When they started writing it, I'm going to find the author. A World Lit Only by Fire. William Manchester. It's basically, he started it to tell the story of Magellan. And then he realized that he could not give proper context about Magellan and why Magellan was doing what he was doing without giving some background. It's from 1993, so it's been out for a nice long time now. But he explains a lot about the world that Magellan grew up in, to explain his subsequent actions, why he was even out there in the first place.
Sure.
And if you think about it, in 1521, which is when he died, that's the world was only lit. It's either daylight or you had candles or torches or lanterns, or no electricity. So that's all the light you had. It's pretty amazing.
At that point, did they have gas lamps yet either?
No, it would have been oil.
Wow. Okay.
But then he also has to go into a lot about the Reformation, because that has already that is happening at this point, which helps explain what is going on in the world. The Copernicus is touched upon, because Copernicus is the one who says, hey, the sun is actually the center of our system, not the earth.
Right.
And that makes that turns people's understanding of the world on its head. So like, he explains all that kind of stuff to give you an idea of what's going through Magellan's mind as he's doing what he's doing. They're coming off the Black Death. The plague is still around, but it's peaked, but it's still there. The Renaissance, why the Renaissance was what it was. and then that leads all into Magellan,
Mhm.
and then culminates in him getting killed on a beach.
Yeah.
And I guess because I enjoyed that book so much that was rattling around in my head.
Many things do.
Also rattling around in my head about choosing an adventure that had Ferdinand Magellan. Many, many, many years ago, Ryan, who played Speedy Pete Boyd, was at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair and portrayed Ferdinand Magellan.
Interesting. Oh yeah, you've mentioned that before. That's right.
I was the evil sheriff that year, Sir Winston Payne. This is 1996,
Mhm.
and Ryan is Ferdinand Magellan, and so I learned a bit about Magellan just from Ryan portraying him. Now, I mean, we're portraying him at a Renaissance fair, so we're taking a lot of liberties with him.
Sure.
The very fact that he was at an Elizabethan fair is ridiculous
Right.
because, again, he died in 1521. Elizabeth isn't even born yet, so like, huh? But we did. That was another reason why my brain went down that way.
Don't the Animaniacs have a song about Magellan?
Yes, I believe they do.
Okay. I've had a couple of Renaissance Fair people have covered that before that I've enjoyed the heck out of. Yeah, I personally, for me, I love the what does our friend John Williams say? Don't let history get in the way of a good story. So, given the opportunity to throw those random folks in there, why not? It's fun.
I mean, at something like a Renaissance fair, when I do have problems though with sometimes with films that take
Okay.
those liberties,
Yeah.
and then the public takes that to be
Mhm.
the public takes that to be the truth.
Yeah.
For instance, Gladiator, Commodus the Emperor,
Mhm.
was not killed in the gladiatorial ring or anything like that. He was murdered, yes, but not in the gladiator's ring or anything like that.
No, but that was still an excellent movie, and it was
Right,
very
right,
well
right. I
put
mean, and
together.
again, that's fine. But it's it's I was just scanning through the comments real quick.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it can still be a very enjoyable movie, and if it touches off an interest in the historical period where
Mhm.
you look up what actually happened, that's cool too. But a lot of people just take it, they're like, oh, that's what happened. So like there's a lot of movies that did not do Queen Elizabeth any favors for historical accuracy,
Mhm.
like Shakespeare in Love. Like,
No. Also, why did Dame Judi Dench win an Oscar for that movie when she was in it for less than 15 minutes? I don't
because they wanted to
understand.
give her an Oscar and they needed a reason,
Yeah, but they could have given her an Oscar a lot later. She
or
wasn't gonna die anytime soon. She just
earlier.
Yeah,
I
jeez,
think
she
that's
did
because
so
they didn't
many
give
other
her
stuff.
one
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
Just that happens in the academies.
Mhm.
Um, but like there's a new one coming out that I am very trepidatious about. The new
Okay.
Napoleon movie that's coming out.
Okay, see, and is that the one with
It's Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix, yeah. Who was also Commodus in the Gladiator movie.
Yes, he sure was.
Truthfully, honestly, I loved his performance in that movie. I think that he has a lot of great performances. Sometimes they can be a little bit controversial, and I am curious if this is going to happen. Yeah.
Rinker, I agree with you. And also Sir David Percival, I agree with you about the this up and coming Bonaparte. I have no idea what it's going to be like. I've only seen like bits and pieces of trailers, but I saw part of a trailer where it's Napoleon, Joaquin Phoenix charging on horseback with a drawn cavalry saber.
Mhm.
And I immediately went, if this is not a dream sequence, I am angry
Mm.
because He
didn't
did
do that.
not. That's no. He
But there's
was
all those famous paintings of him doing things like that. So
right. They're
maybe that's
staged.
yeah.
He was a general. He was a very competent general, but he started out in artillery, so he would not have been charging with just like mm, mm, no. Um, but I don't have the context of that scene from the movie either. That it could be him fantasizing about being in battle, for all I know.
Sure.
I don't know the
My
context.
understanding of the movie, based on I read People magazine, I've read Entertainment magazine since I was a child. They're always on my mom's coffee table, so that's I have a prescription. I have a subscription to People magazine. My understanding is
You
that
have a prescription to People magazine.
I do. It's it's important for my well-being. Um, my understanding is it deals a bit more with his relationship with Josephine. There's a lot more going on with that than there is in the rest of everything.
That's another there's another dicey thing too, because historically it was they're like, oh, people romanticize it. Oh, he's in love with Josephine, and they this perfect love story. Like,
No, and
oh,
I think that they go into a lot of the affairs that they had on either side of the
yeah, they both
situation.
had affairs,
Yeah.
constantly. And then Napoleon flat out ditches her
Yes.
so he can marry into the Austro-Hungarian Empire's line of succession, for purely political reasons. And he completely sets Josephine aside and just like, nope. It's
Yeah, and I think it deals with more of that stuff. I think that there are battle scenes, but that the last thing I read was about that.
Jay, I agree with you completely. Yeah, both to his benefit and detriment. I just listened to an audiobook on a biography of Napoleon that was fascinating, and I learned a bunch of stuff I had no idea. And there's some things that you never hear about that were good with him, and some things you never hear about that were bad with him. So it's like,
Yeah. And I will say, just as an aside, this is the dichotomy of how we come up with games, where you listen to audiobooks about historical stuff and you'll listen to podcasts about historic Rome and things like that. And then I listen to almost exclusively murder podcasts. And that's where I tend to come up with a lot of the stuff that I've come up with for Delta Green. Up to and including one of my favorite games that we ever did, which was the Polybius game. That made me really, all of that was inspired by murder podcasts. So yeah, just in terms of things that we figured out.
yeah. Jay, at perfectly average height.
He was like 5'7". He's like the same height as I am.
Yeah, perfectly average height. 5'7", 5'8", somewhere around in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally average size.
Just as tall as Tom Cruise.
From Corsica.
Isn't that part of Spain?
But not from a poor family in Corsica, as is often portrayed. He was from a minorly noble, not really noble, but well-off family. He was from a well-off family. They owned some orchards and stuff like that. So yeah, he was a lot of distortion over time. Like, oh, he was from a poor dirt farmer family and all this stuff. And no, not at all.
Quad Kevin, I love this. I wish I could be not totally average height. I will tell you this has been fun to find out. I have 5.5 pounds of child inside of me, if you want me to stand up and show it off to the audience. But of that 5.5 pounds, apparently what did they say? They're like 17 or 18 inches long now. Like they're like long. And they're like, yeah, you're like the 75th percentile. And I blame him because he's 6'1". So I'm not short. I'm 5'7", but his entire family is huge. How tall is your niece now? She's taller than me. She's 5'9".
She's 5'10", I think.
Yeah, I'm making a supermodel. I'm not even having a choice in this anymore. It's just long
What do you,
baby.
I'm going to answer. What do I think
Yeah.
of the arsenic poisoning theory of his death? Um, I I mean, it's an interesting theory, and it's fun to have conspiracy theories about it. He had stomach issues for a very long time.
Yeah, I thought that's why he always had his hand in his pocket. It wasn't because he was doing anything. He was like holding on to his stomach because it hurt.
He was in his he had gastrointestinal issues for many years. So to have him die of like something like colon cancer or something like that is not at all surprising.
Yeah.
So like while it's
Mhm.
fun to think conspiracy theory with arsenic poisoning and all that stuff, I think after his second time that he gets sent off, when he was defeated again and then deposed yet again, um, he wasn't coming back from that one. Um, they learned their lesson and they put him somewhere where he was not going to get back to France. Um, so while arsenic again, it's romantic to think, oh, he was poisoned and no, I think he just got sick and died. He
You have
spent
an
a lot of
interesting
time in the
view of
saddle.
what's romantic. I appreciate you.
What's that?
You have an interesting view of what's romantic. I appreciate you.
Romantic in the more classical literature sense.
Sure. Come on.
Um, but yeah, he had been in and out of sick beds for even back when he was still
Come here.
um, in the field commanding. He was absent from several battles, which he subsequently lost from his illnesses. So I don't. Alas, I think it was just got sick and died. Um,
Stop clawing the chair and just come up here, idiot.
oh, I was surprised when Speedy used a Zippo lighter in the game. Um, yeah, Zippos. They were relatively new, but they were definitely around in 1936. Um,
We have a guest.
I don't always get the historical things right. Aramis has arrived. That is our cat, Aramis.
He's huge. He's being very cute.
Good boy. I have to not let him in my office, otherwise he will chew on all the cords. But yeah, I don't always get everything right historically because very often I have to make calls on the fly as the game master.
Yep.
Like, there was something that happened during this last game that was afterwards I discovered that like, oh, those weren't really invented yet. Oh, it was radar on the ships. I had I said I said I don't want you to come across my radar again. The Captain Blankenship said aboard the
And Blankenship had also an inside joke in some regard you told me about earlier.
well, no, Blankenship is a totally joke name. His name is Blank and Ship because I
Oh,
couldn't.
okay.
Yeah, and I think actually it was either Steve-O or Ryan said that first, and I said nope, that's his name now. Done.
And didn't we almost call the ship like the SS Winnebago or something ridiculous?
Well, no, we ended up calling it the Newburgh.
Yes. No, there was a town that you specifically mentioned that was a
Poughkeepsie.
joke. Poughkeepsie. That's it.
Because a lot of cruisers were named after cities.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about the famous one that is referenced in Jaws, the Indianapolis.
Yes.
So a lot of World War II cruisers were named after cities. A lot of like the carriers had a mixed bag. There were some that were just named whatever. Like there was the Hornet in World War II. There was the Enterprise in World War II. But then there was a number of them that were named after battles. So there was the Yorktown,
Right.
and there
I
was
did
the
remember that for some
Saratoga. as carrier names, and it's only been in recent times, I think, that we started naming them after presidents. Like sometime after World War II was when they started naming
You want to purr the
after
microphone?
presidents.
You want to purr?
Oh, thank you. How much you appreciate how much is spot on. It's on the fly, and I'm trying to like. You'll see me when we're gaming. Sometimes I'll be
Yeah.
looking off over here because I'm pulling up. I've got a whole nother monitor over here. And here I'll show you.
You also do have extensive research knowledge just because you're you. That's history is your thing.
Well, and I have a good retention of weird things, which is why I do well as an actor too, because I can remember little lines fairly well.
He has super fast recall about absolutely everything.
Oh, and so yeah, what I just showed you on my other screen, I was looking up before we got online. The original game that we're using the rules for, Over the Edge, it is still available, and they just released their 3rd edition.
Ooh.
So that
3rd
very
edition since like 96.
Actually, even before that,
He's
say
still
93. Originally published. Nope. Yeah, like 93, I think. But they have a new edition out. And those are the rule systems we've been using. Although it looks like they've changed a little bit of it, the rules from what was from their 1st edition. So we're essentially using the 1st edition rules of Over the Edge.
Yeah, but still super simple. That's the whole point, was that you wanted to have something, a
Right.
game system that was super easy to get into. That is the only thing that I dislike about Delta Green to an extent, is some of the mechanics can be a little bit complicated. And when we go into character building, I have to bring everybody together in advance versus Glue Master can just like, oh, okay, hey, we're going to do characters. You can put this together in 20 minutes. Here are the things that you need. Roll these dice. Ta-da. You what? No, you can't get in the crib. Stop.
He begs to differ.
He does.
I think that's because a lot of my gaming style, the thing that I like about gaming the most is the cooperative storytelling that you get to do. And to me, there, as a result, the rules are less important than the story.
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned on this before. There's a guy out there called Guy Sklanders, who does How to Be a Great GM, and he's very much of that same mindset. Is like the rules, while important, aren't the focus. They're there to help the story along. What's most important is the story, and the story that, as he says, and I agree with, is it's not my story. If I'm making the players go a certain way and forcing them to an inevitable conclusion that I have in my head, this is what it's going to, no matter what, this is what's going to happen, then why am I playing a game? Why don't I just write a novel instead?
I see where you're coming from on that, and I love having the open-endedness of it. But there are also, when I'm creating stuff at times, what I'm coming up with is basically a movie. And then I have like okay, I kind of want these people to go from point A to point B. Let's see what happens. And if point B goes off the rails, then it's okay. We get to point B. But I like creating scenes that specifically happen in games, including the first Delta Green game that I ran, where everybody was they had kind of pre-gen characters, and They were all it was just a horror survival. And I think that that still has a place in gaming. It's not the same as like if you're writing your own D&D campaign and then you want to serve your players continually, but in some of these contexts, I think it's kind of fun to just be like, I accept I'm about to play in a horror movie, and some of these characters will get killed off. We'll get to a point where we end up with like a final girl. Like if you go into the gaming session knowing that that's going to happen, I think it's still valid.
Well, I mean, and that's going to happen in any decent game. But what I mean is,
like railroad.
Yeah, railroading. So like I changed the ending. I was originally going to have the final battle be in my head. I prepared for the final battle being the cultists catching up to them and getting the silver key back, and trying to get the silver key back. But because of what was happening,
family member number 2
and
came
there's
in.
the dog. Because of what was happening, it no longer made sense. So then I had to go with what the players had done. So they changed the direction of the narrative. And as the game master, I had to be adaptable and willing to go with that and not force them. And Jay Rinker, I absolutely agree with you 100%. It's a collective story.
Mhm.
That's the thing. It's you and the players working together to tell a story. If you are just the one telling the story and they're just along for the ride and they get to roll dice every once in a while, then that's, while some people like that style because they just like the clickety clack of the math rocks, which is awesome. Don't get me wrong, but I like to have a little bit more. So as a game master, I think it's a lot of figuring out if your style of play matches your player's style.
Yeah, for sure. And I try to be upfront with things that I've created. Like if I'm coming into a specific adventure being like, here's how I want this to go. Is that something you're into? I think I'm realizing just now, I come from a LARP background. So for a while, I was writing a lot of adventures for LARPing. But in order to get a LARP to work properly, you've got to lead your players from scene to scene. It's not necessarily railroading because they still have autonomy in the scene itself, but you have to get them to the right part of the woods to actually encounter the character that they need to encounter. And then you can fix things once they encounter that character and determine what happened. But you have to lead them physically down a path, and that's I think where a lot of my creativity comes in, and the story writing too. I do a lot of story writing, so I'm used to like these characters are going this way and they're going to get there, and then my brain will come up with what happens next.
But yeah, well, in the case of a LARP, you have a very finite number of NPCs and stuff and monsters that you can have them encounter, locations. So you kind of have to get them right there because you don't have the option of like a tabletop role-playing game where it's like, oh, you've decided to go off in a different direction. Let me write this down.
Make up a new town name and surprise. Are you going to the Gnome Depot?
For this game is I looked up a whole bunch of Philippine names.
Thank you for doing that, by the way. I wondered where that was coming from.
But I didn't assign them to anything. I just had a list of Philippine names, knowing full well that the players were going to go and talk to random bartender number 2. But rather than just have him be random bartender number 2, congratulations, his name is Perez. Bayani Lim, the guy from the black market. That was just a random name I had written down. Bayani Lim was a name I had written down from that list. And then when Lucas Evans was like, I know a guy in the black market there. I'm like, you sure do. And here's his name. Let's go.
I love those moments.
I was like, oh, because again, that was the players driving the story. I hadn't in my mind said, oh, well, there's going to be a black market connection where they can go do a thing. I was just like, nope, they're just.
Well, and it's them using the stuff that they have on their character sheet at their disposal. Like it's not out of the realm of possibility for Steve-O's character to have that connection.
Exactly, which is why I was like, okay, great, yeah, no,
Yeah,
make a
you
roll
do.
for your black market connection. You scored high enough, great, yeah, sure. You know a guy in Manila, sure, why not? And then Steve-O just ran with it. One thing that did come up in the game that I am very interested, proud, happy of
Okay.
is when they went to that black market to Bayani Lim.
Mhm.
I threw in that there was a bunch of medical supplies, including the amphetamines,
Mm,
which were becoming a big deal at this time.
yes.
Um, I don't know if anybody remembers. I made Katie's character, the doctor, roll, and she rolled well. And I said, "Okay, you're all right." And then Speedy bought some of the amphetamines, and at the end, the last session, he took some in front of her, and I made her
Mhm.
roll again, and she did not roll well. And I said, "Oh, you really want some?" This is because I have all of our players, and that doesn't always come up. I like to add a dark secret
Mm.
into their character um, that helps flesh them out and gives us more background detail and information on our characters. So she had chosen for her dark secret that she had at one time been addicted to amphetamines.
Mm.
So I threw it in front of her face again to see what her character would do, and she fell off the wagon there. We'll see how that changes in the future.
See, and I love those moments of stuff like that. What that happened in the game that we played where Ryan was a mob guy, and then
Yep,
he had a secret photography, like he was into photography, but he was secretly into like taking pictures of women.
he was. Yeah, he was a voyeur, and
Yeah. Like
yeah,
stuff like that. And I was just like, what? And like to know these people as human beings, they are wonderful, wonderful humans that would never do anything to harm anybody. So when you get these moments of like Ryan being like, oh, I guess I'll just buy drugs. I was like, Ryan, oh, it's not you. Right. I just that freedom to be like, oh, I'm going to be somebody completely different today. I'm going to be a person who buys drugs for fun. Like, okay, cool.
well, we
I
had
don't
back
question it.
in the previous one, the one that I did, that long running one that was set in the 1880s,
Yes.
the 1890s. We had a lot of, because it went so long. We had a lot of the characters' flaws eventually come to the surface.
Mhm.
Their dark secrets showed up. So, for instance, Arthur Rowan was the Irish boxer who killed a man
Mhm.
in the ring. What his secret was he did it on purpose.
Mm.
It wasn't an accidental at all. That was a deliberate, and he the reason why he was in North America was because he's like, I got to get out of here, and he was on the lam. Um, so you know, I love that kind of it. And again, sometimes it shows up in the games, sometimes it doesn't. Um, in our last in the last game I just ran, we there were the very vaguest of hints of two of the other characters' dark secrets, but only just barely. And I'm not going to mention anything because we're going to see if we can get the
Yeah,
characters
we'd love to
together
have these
again.
players come back and do this again.
Uh,
Especially now, like the closer I the closer I get to potentially giving birth, the less likely it is for me to be able to do anything except take care of babies. So I'm going to be out in terms of creation for a while, other than what I'm already creating. Um, but yeah, I'd love to have these players come back again and do another one of your adventures. I think that they're so all of them are so compelling and very different than a lot of the other characters we've had in the past.
I have in the back of my head right now is a meta plot for this one,
Mhm.
like an overarching thing that's going on. And you know what it is.
I do. I've talked to you about it.
But I'm not going to reveal it now because I want to see if we can get it going, and then hopefully you guys watching will actually be able to piece it together and go, hey, wait a minute. I hope we're going to have the chance to do that. Just like our now the one I did before, the late Victorian one, 1880s, 1890s. That's just started off as a series of one shots kind of strung together. And then I kind of kept getting some of the same players.
I have to say, I'm very proud that I kind of convinced you to, when I gave you the book, The Devil in the White City, and I was like, please check this out. Like, you have to get this guy involved in your story. That I got.
So then I
you
decided to make that the
serial
focal
killer.
and the end point of the
Loved
story.
it. Yeah, I was so
that
happy about that.
all of this paranormal activity was happening because of something that that H.H. Holmes did.
Mhm.
Not that he did, it was like a mastermind. I decided that would be too obvious if he was a mastermind, but rather he accidentally released a very powerful entity, and that was causing all the problems in and around the area, and all the adventures slowly focused into Chicago. That first one was an outlier because that was just a one shot.
And let's introduce our characters and get them.
Well, and I
sort of
had written that
established.
adventure in the 90s.
Right.
And it was just fun. It was our very first one on the channel, and I'm like, I really enjoyed this game, so let's get it back and let's run it again and again and again. If you guys have not seen that, if you came into Gothic Horror Gaming later, I don't know if it's still on YouTube.
Yeah, I don't know what our situation is with saved games at this point. I don't know if you can watch back content as much as you used to be able to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an excellent game.
It was essentially, if no one had seen, if some of you haven't seen it, it was set in Ireland, in the town of Ballymagoran, where many disappearances were occurring. Cut to the chase of it all, there was a spirit of a vainglorious priest, Catholic priest from the 1700s, who had basically found the old statue of Crom Criash, which was in Ballymagoran. And he found that old golden idol and made a bell out of it for his church. It crashed on him, killed him, releasing the spirit, trapping his spirit in our world. But then also the spirit of Crom is in the bell, and all the craziness was happening. Our players had to suss it out, figure out to ring the bell in the consecrated church to stop Crom and the evil priest and the dead priest. But then adding in leprechauns, who
that was
they were there to help, but also I determined that, so if they ring the bell, the players ring the bell, that dispels Crom Criash. It also dispels the Seamus ghost of the priest. But it would also get rid of the leprechauns. So the players, as they're about to ring the bell, the leprechauns just show up and say, please don't. But the players have to if they want to stop Crom. So yes, they stop Crom, but at what cost? That a little bit of magic has gone and is gone from the world now. And I think really good horror has that sadness in it sometimes.
Mhm.
So I was very proud of that adventure. And having the chance to do it on a stream for a bunch of people after I had run like 3 different groups of people through it over the span of 20 years up before that point. So then getting a chance to do it for a stream and exposing that story to a lot more people felt it felt really good. One of these days maybe I'll even work it up into a novella. I don't know.
I've written a book, and that was a long effort.
So Mel and I have been over here yammering an awful lot. Do you guys have any questions? Feel free to put them in the chat. If you have any questions about the game, past games, gaming, horror, our main jobs, which are working at Renaissance fairs. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
I am in the background talking to Paolo right now about some stuff. And I just wanted to let everybody know we are going to do one more game as us, and then pretty much for the entire month of October we're going to have to be off. We might whatever game you're about to run may run into potentially a point of October. But we are potentially reaching out to Malix, who used to run stuff on the channel, who has been
Malix Nustel.
Yeah, Nustel. Thank you. That's the name that he goes by now. So we're potentially reaching out to him to see if he would like to run an adventure while we are off having a baby. So definitely, if you're into this content, then please check us out in September, and feel free to check out his new stuff, whatever he comes up with in October, assuming he says yes. But just be aware that we're going to be able to run one adventure, and then we're going to have to take October off, and then we should be back in November-ish.
But Gothic Horror should still be going on.
It should still be going, John, just not us.
We're trying to find our guest host, whoever's stepping in for Johnny Carson. For those of you old enough to know what I mean when I say that.
They would also, Letterman, happened to Letterman a couple of times, happened to Leno, like Conan O'Brien, for those of you who are still around in the 2000s watching that kind of stuff. Who's on even now?
Besides Colbert, I have no idea.
Is Colbert still on?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if he still was.
Well, now with the writer's strike, I don't know if anybody's on.
Right, and that's a whole thing. But yeah, somebody will be on this channel at this time to take care of things temporarily, and then we'll come back, and we will be running stuff down in he will be running stuff down in Louisiana, and I will hopefully be in the background of the channel to be able to take care of things. Thank you, Jimmy Fallon. Yes, Sir David Percival, you are correct. Jimmy Fallon is still on.
Oh, and there's a couple that are still out there.
I don't know if the one dude, the English guy, is still on.
Greg Ferguson?
No.
He's not on. Oh, you mean John Oliver?
No.
John Oliver still
There's way too many English people. I'm sorry.
Had his show on.
Musical theater actor. Gosh, he was in the movie production of Into the Woods and a couple of other things. Not Josh Gad. Who am I thinking of? I don't know. I'll come up with it.
James Corden.
James Corden. Thank you. Yes, James Corden. Although I'm not sure.
Sarah and Sir David both came up with that one.
Yay! Thank you. My mom loves James Corden. He also did the he does like a musical on the crosswalk in LA. I think it's LA. Yeah, it's LA. So he'll like do part of Beauty and the Beast in the middle of the crosswalk in the 2-minute segments between like lights. But yeah, anyway, all that to say, there are many references to late night talk show people that we could make. Somebody will be here temporarily.
Somebody will be filling in for us for at least a little while.
And then we will mightily reclaim our prize. We've been doing this fairly consistently since 2020.
Yeah.
It's and I mean, and I'm very grateful for everybody who makes content on this channel, but like there are a lot of people who have had to be like, and I got to step away because my life is different. But it's been us and mostly the main game that have been here the longest, the most consistently.
Yeah.
See that. I'm proud of us.
Yeah. Paul originally approached me and you and said, "Hey, do you guys want to do a thing?" I said, I've got just, because he wanted to flesh out the channel so it wasn't just the Tuesday night games. So he was like, do you guys have anything you can offer? And I'm like, yeah, actually I do.
That was the first time I'd ever professionally DM'd in any kind of situation, because I had done like 1 or 2 things with my close friends, but prior to that, I hadn't run anything. So that's why I picked Delta Green, because we just in 2020 we were running continual Delta Green games with just the group of us as friends, and I was like, okay, I am now deeply familiar with this system. I'm confident I can do something with it.
The yeah, it was nice to have the ability to get some of my old adventures a new life and have them run again. Um, so, well, thank you, Johnny. Appreciate it.
Oh,
And also thank you, Monroe Max,
thank you, Monroe Max. Yeah, you guys have been on our channel for a long time.
for a long time,
Long
if not
time.
the whole time.
Long time watchers. You guys
we
and
are.
Sally and Sir David.
I'm trying to figure out what my next one is going to be in September. And it will depend on. Thank you, Sally. It will. We love you too. It will
I owe you a
depend
story.
on
I'm
which
working on it.
players I can get.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I would love to have this same quartet that we just had, because I have a vague idea of what I want to do next. It will be set in 1937, just a year later. And I have 2 possible locations in mind. That makes sense for those that same group of players to be in, and to make use of the seaplane. We've got a seaplane. Let's use it.
Oh, good.
So I'm thinking I'm thinking Alaska as one possibility.
Oh, love Alaska.
That is definitely a place I am considering as a location.
If I've got ideas for Alaska. I've already written a story about stuff like that.
Yeah, I've got a couple ideas for Alaska. I don't want to say too much.
No.
But the other one that I'm thinking of was actually in the Mediterranean.
Ooh.
It's a little bit of a stretch to get Speedy Pete Boyd to fly all the way to the Mediterranean,
but not to Alaska.
Well, Alaska,
the
if you via the Aleutians and everything like that, and it's still a U.S. territory, so that makes sense, because the Philippines in 1936 are still technically a U.S. territory. Yeah, Crete actually. Again, Sally, I'm not going to say too much more, because I actually have a really great idea for it. I just don't know if it makes sense. I'll have to look it up. But I've got a great idea for in the Mediterranean, and I've got a decent idea for Alaska. So I have to settle on which one I like better. I'm leaning toward Mediterranean right now, actually.
Okay. Talk to me about Alaska. I have ideas about Alaska. I have.
All right.
Things
We'll discuss Alaska and or the Med. Do you guys watching have a preference as to where it's set? Whether it's a Mediterranean or Alaska, or is there some other place that you've always wanted to see a game set in? Is there a location that you're like, oh man, this would be really cool if you set a game in 1960s Nepal or whatever?
That is very specific.
that was totally random. Just came
out of nowhere. But yeah, we've never said anything in Nepal. You know what? I would love to see us do something in the Himalayas at some point. Or what's the European mountain? The Alps. No, I don't think anybody's done content in stuff like that yet. I've certainly never done research into those things. But I would love Himalayas. Ooh, Kara Chapel has a great one. Chernobyl after the meltdown.
Chernobyl. Oh, that's a good Delta Green one.
Yeah, that is. That would be, when would that happen? 80 something, right? Is when the meltdown happened.
A game in Amsterdam in 1937. What's going on in Amsterdam in 37? Now I'm curious to know what's going on in Amsterdam in 37.
I mean, all kinds of things, I'm sure.
Well, so there's I want to stay away from
the European sector during the Second World War, because that's what
right.
everybody does.
So once we get into the it was Chernobyl was early 90s.
Okay.
I'm looking up Amsterdam in 1937. There was a transatlantic ocean liner, movie theater. Daylight savings time started in
Ooh.
Amsterdam in 1937. So that's interesting. It's an interesting thing that happens in Amsterdam. And when is Chernobyl?
I think, yeah, Chernobyl would be interesting.
86.
Okay, see, I thought it was 80s. Okay. 1986. Okay. We could set it in 1990, so well after the disaster, when people have finally, there are a lot of people that start sneaking back there because there's graffiti everywhere. The dogs are there. I watched a River Monsters episode where Jeremy Wade got to fish in Chernobyl. That was absolutely bizarre. Life finds a way.
Yeah. Interesting. Sorry, I'm reading. I'm looking up things because you guys have sent me down rabbit holes already.
Yeah, and it's
my
happening.
brain is working on
what was that cat burglar movie? Where was that set?
Which one?
That we watched? I thought it was called The Cat Burglar, and it's a Alfred Hitchcock movie, and that's where Princess Grace meets her future husband in Monaco. It's Monaco, isn't it?
It's Monaco.
Okay. See, now that would be interesting. I would love to see a game that was more like a supernatural mystery layered on top of like a James Bond kind of situation. So like a Casino Royale, but with some deeper context to it, I think would be fun. Like putting it in Casino Royale. That's like a poker tournament in Monaco, I think.
It's in the modern update one. I think it's Montenegro, but I believe it was Monaco originally.
Okay.
In the original book, I think. I'm not 100% on that one.
But I would love to. I love using tropes, like maybe not common tropes, but like, okay, things that you're expecting. So like we just did a game that was sort of Indiana Jones-esque. Like I love having that plus something. So having like a James Bond plus supernatural element or something like that, I think would be cool. And I'm just spitballing the same as anybody else. I mean, if you guys are okay, Slumber Project says Australian Dreamtime.
Oh, yeah.
That would be interesting. 1940s Casablanca, which is that's when the movie takes place, is Casablanca. So that would be interesting. Again, I feel like that's bordering over World War II. Yeah. I finally got to watch that movie, what, like a year or two ago?
Yeah, I finally got you to watch Casablanca.
It was gorgeous.
So good.
Very
There's
well
a
done.
reason it's on top lists of everything.
Mhm. You know what I still haven't seen and I cannot find anywhere to watch it is freaking Citizen Kane. I've never seen it. I don't know
Really?
anyone who has seen it either. I guess you. But yeah, you don't have it because you've looked through your Criterion Collection DVDs that you still have and you don't have it.
No, you're right. I don't.
And
I did look
we've
for it.
looked on like Netflix and I mean I'm sure it might be on Amazon Prime that we would have to rent it. But definitely not on most things. And I don't know a single person, I guess besides Tom, who's seen it. My parents have never seen it. My family has never seen it. See, Sir David's seen it, but no one sells it. You can't find it. And I know it's a crucial movie because it's the first movie that ever introduces the idea of a flashback, which then becomes critical to a number of other films and tropes and things like that. So it's awesome. But I don't think I've ever seen, is that Sir Laurence Olivier? No. Yeah?
What?
The main character. Guy who won the Oscar. Who I can't think of his name. I can picture him. What is his name? Please.
Um, Orwell.
Now you go get okay.
Not George Orwell. He wrote 19.
He wrote a book. Yeah, sorry.
He did all the wine commercials. He was
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles.
Thank you. There we go.
Having a mental block on that.
I've never seen.
That's why I was smiling and laughing,
Yeah.
because I was also having a mental block. I'm like, it's Wellesian. No, it's Orson Welles. Thank you.
Orson Welles. Yeah, I've never seen an Orson Welles movie, and I know he's done plenty. He was like super famous.
And one of his last things he ever did was the voice of Unicron on the Transformers animated movie.
Oh.
He's also, the original War of the Worlds radio broadcast.
Yes.
Is him.
Yes. Right. I remember that. Although I don't think I've ever heard it either.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah, the original, I might have heard a clip of it at one point.
You probably heard chunks of it here and there.
Yeah. I also have this idea of watching every Alfred Hitchcock movie ever, which I haven't. Oh, that comes back around to MacGuffin. I've seen, gosh, what have I seen? I've seen The Birds a million times. I've seen Psycho, but not recently.
Kara, I have seen that in his Tantrum. I have heard that one. That's a good one.
Orson Welles' Frozen Peas. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. But yeah, just in the same way that Guillermo del Toro is an amazing director, especially of horror, I need to watch more Alfred Hitchcock. Because even just watching The Cat Burglar, which I did not realize was a Hitchcock movie, that was so beautifully framed and shot and gorgeous. And I was like, okay, need to see this. Okay. Sir David says Amazon has the 75th anniversary edition of Citizen Kane. So we'll have to watch that at some point.
We'll have to watch it.
It's also long as hell, which I know.
Well, one of the things that is so fundamental about Citizen Kane is not necessarily the story, although the story is very good too. So many movies up until that point were essentially stage plays that were filmed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of just single shot camera action, and things happen like it's going across the proscenium arch and things are occurring. That's a lot of movies before,
and a lot of the old MGM musical type stuff. So
right.
It's a play basically.
It's a stage play that we filmed,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of things are like that. Citizen Kane breaks that and goes off, and the camera is used to help tell the story. It's not just there's actors in the frame doing things.
Mm-hmm.
It's the camera is down on the floor when the snow globe rolls out of his hand and rolls into frame. That was never done really before this moment. So that's why.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that Citizen Kane is really
Is that
good for.
it's movie acting for the first time, really.
It makes a distinct break from we're just filming a stage to the camera being pivotal in the storytelling itself.
Mm. Ooh, sorry, Sir Whitebat has a really cool concept.
Apple
Aus-
forests in Mongolia.
Mongolia. That I have never heard
I
of.
have never heard of that.
That's fascinating. We've been to Australia, so I think that would be interesting to set something in Australia or the Australian outback. However, I will caveat that with doing an Australian accent is super hard. I cannot master it. So that will be a thing. We try our best to not do offensive accents. We try our best to not do stereotypes. But I feel like if we set a game in Australia or New Zealand, we'd have to at least attempt the Australian accent. And that would be the biggest challenge of running a game in Australia.
I am going crazy just looking up everything that everyone is posting in the comments.
Yeah.
Like I am just like nonstop just.
Not a setting, but Discover magazine just had articles on parasomnias and the forensic scientist who testifies about them in court and the real human skeletons in university collections. Yes, some of them collected without permission and consent. That also brings us back to H.H. Holmes, who was selling
He
skeletons.
did in fact sell skeletons to several universities,
Yes.
which are believed to have been some of his victims.
Yes. Parasomnia.
I'm looking it up right now.
What is the definition of that? Because I'm thinking it's something else.
Disruptive sleep-related disorders, abnormal movements, talk, emotions, and actions happen while you're sleeping, although others might think you're awake.
Yes.
These things include sleep terrors, sleepwalking, nightmare disorders, sleep paralysis.
I don't remember who is in the landmark case, but there is a landmark case about a person who supposedly was sleepwalking from stress while they were staying at their in-laws' house, and he murdered his in-laws. And they proved it. They proved that he was not aware of what was going on at the time.
This actually hits very, very close to home right now for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that.
Well, no, a friend of mine's son.
Oh, yes.
Just sleptwalked, had a seizure, struck his head and died in the past week.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very real thing.
Yeah.
Sleepwalking
itself is scary. I've never had a sleepwalking issue. I know a number of people who sleep talk. And I've certainly had, I've hallucinated when I've been very tired. And I can only imagine what it is when you're not even conscientiously aware that you're moving about and walking around. And then you suddenly wake up and you're outside.
I did fall asleep with my eyes open one time.
Oh, I've seen you do that, not recently, but I've seen you do that in the 10 years we've been together.
Yeah.
It's
I
scary.
did it one time, and my ex girlfriend at the time, I was doing driving routes. I was driving around delivering for McKesson Drug Corporation to CVS's around the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area in the 90s. And I was doing 14-hour days driving. And I got home one night and I was so exhausted. I fell asleep with my eyes open and freaked her out.
Because you look dead. Yeah.
Yeah. And my bright breathing was very shallow and freaked her out. And it was nothing to me. It was like, oh, huh, what? Oh. And sleep paralysis I've had once. That was when I was in high school.
And it seemingly, at least medically, happens more often to young men than it does to other subset groups of humans.
I was convinced. So I woke up and I was unable to move, and I was convinced that there was a white, gaunt figure
Mm.
leering down at me, and I could do nothing about it. Um, I was staying in my parent. I was still living at home with my parents, and I was staying in. They had a large family room, and I had it sectioned off with a folding ping pong table, and then my bed was along the one side of the folding ping pong table.
Mhm.
And like I woke up in the middle of the night, and in my mind, there was a creature gazing over the ping pong table at me, and
That's
it was white
awful.
and gaunt and ghoulish, but like almost pure white and gray, just with big black eyes and needle sharp teeth, just
Mhm.
glaring over that thing at me, and
Mhm.
I could not move for I don't know how long it really was. It felt like minutes and minutes and like 15 minutes is what it felt like. It was probably 5 seconds, but, it felt like forever, and then I, like, blinked finally, and it was gone, and I could move again. But that was very freaky.
Yeah. I've never had sleep terrors. I have had in that like liminal space when you're just starting to fall asleep. And you can tell Jack I said this because I think I've told him myself. Uh, we used to have an in-room air conditioning unit, and there were a couple of occasions where I was so tired but couldn't sleep that I thought that Jack Lepiards was speaking to me from my air conditioning unit late at night. And it just sounded like that kind of relaxing, quiet sort of like NPR speak, which he's very good at. Um, but the terror of it was I would be half awake at 4 in the morning, and it would sound like someone was quietly talking in the corner of my room. And it would take me 10 minutes to figure out that no, there's no one here. It's just the air conditioner, and you're hearing that susurrus. It's your brain is trying to interpret it as speaking, and it's not happening.
And you wrote a story about it.
I did. I wrote a story called Ghost Story that was about that, and it was inspired by that event and by the one time an overzealous firefly tried to mate with our router that was up above our bed.
I remember that.
So there's this
We had a router extender,
with a blue
in
flashing light.
with a blue flashing light in the bedroom, and a firefly got in to the house, and it was just lighting up the room,
Yeah.
trying to gain the attention of the router.
And it
Just
was like 3 in the morning, and I had no idea what was going on. And
it
I
was
was
so
like,
bright. It was such a bright firefly that it woke us up
yeah.
from like a dead sleep. It was like, what?
So yeah, that whole
Ridiculous.
story is based in things that have happened to me. And also my friend Katie Bourbon's wedding that we went to around the same time. And that I was getting no sleep while planning my own wedding. So yeah.
Well, speaking of sleep, friends, we've had a long day.
We have.
If does anyone have any quick other questions before we sign off for the night? We'll linger for
Oh,
maybe
I feel like I should show off just in case we don't get too much of a bye week later. But yeah, that's all person. I weigh more than Tom now, which is impressive. I weigh more than a man who is 6'1". So there is a part of me that is kind of proud of that, of like, I have safely put on that much weight. Like, okay, for the rest of my life, I hope I will never get to this point again. And this is the only time. This is our plan is one kid, one time, that's it. So I'm trying, while there are a lot of very frustrating and difficult moments, I am trying my best to enjoy and appreciate the things that my body is currently capable of, and the things that we've gone through to get to this point. So thank you all for your support in doing stuff. And I will throw this up here real quick, just as a reminder. We are at patreon.com/quill and quote. I've been putting out a whole bunch of stuff because I know at some point soon I'm going to give birth. So if you would like to support us and our family, feel free to check that out. Patreon.com/quill and quote. You have to type it in because it has a lot of 18 plus content, usually about murder. Or sometimes spicy romance. So anyway, yeah. Final questions.
So as soon as I get with our players and figure out who's available, we'll be doing another adventure starting next Wednesday. I have an idea just from our conversations tonight. I'm going to say no more right now. I actually have two ideas depending on which players I can get. So we will see what can be done. So we'll post it on Facebook. I'll make sure that it gets posted in Discord when we know our lineup a little bit better. And there's our dog.
He's a good
There's
boy.
Ozymandias. So as soon as we know, we'll let you know. Probably another 4-week-long adventure for the month of September. And then we'll take it from there, and hopefully we'll have our replacement person come on in and take care of it, and we'll keep you guys updated as we go along, what's happening and when. Maybe get a little bit more than just the next 4 weeks, depending on how things go. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here for our kind of like behind the scenes wrap up session from our last game.
And thanks for giving us all of these really cool ideas too. It's
and
great generation of ideas.
And I learned a bunch of stuff just from your suggestions. I've already been just going, oh, the thing I didn't figure out, what is apple forests in Mongolia? What is that about? All right, before we go, I'm going to look that up.
You can look that up. I will mention that both of us are performing at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair if you happen to be nearby. So I am performing with my group Chase Treasure. And then the Glue Master here is performing with Buckle and Swash. He's going to be there longer because he doesn't have to worry about what I'm doing. So he will be there as Buckle and Swash, a pirate sword fighting show from August 19th to September 17th. And then after that, he will be going in to do the Mud Show, the Mud Skippers, for the rest of the season. So mud in October in Pennsylvania. Of course it won't snow. But yeah, if you would like to check us out in person, you can feel free to support us by going to those shows and finding us there. We also both highly recommend the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair. We've both been on cast before. The cast they're lovely this year. There are a lot of really amazing independent acts that are coming through the entire run of the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair season, including channel favorites like Hob the Troll. Wait, I have it there. Hob the Troll.
Yeah, be sure to visit our website, hobthetroll.bandcamp.com.
Yep. So he'll be there for a little while.
No, he's there for the rest of the run.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot he was there.
He'll be living in our basement.
Yes, for half of it until
the baby comes.
Yep. But feel free to check this out too.
So I just discovered why at the apple forest of Mongolia.
Yes.
That is where apples are believed to have originated.
Oh.
In Kazakhstan.
Cool.
So that is the origin of the apple about 750,000 years ago. Oh, excuse me. Early Paleolithic food gatherers in modern day Kazakhstan in Central Asia.
That is fascinating.
Asia discovered sour crab apples growing wild in the forest and then bred them from there.
Yeah, I love the selective breeding of apples because I love many varieties of them. What do we have at the house right now? Green apples. We have Granny Smith, Red Delicious, and Honeycrisp. And that's one of my favorite things to do in fall is to go walk around and find apples. And I'll just have a baby carriage with me this time, which will be fun.
And that's all.
Yay. Do you want to do the breakdown for the ending?
Yes, we want to thank our sponsors once again. Let us thank. Let's start with ourselves this time first.
Ooh.
With us, Dare, we've been putting out stories on Patreon. We collected a bunch of them into this collection of short fiction and poetry. As new stuff comes out, you can check it out Patreon at Quill and Quote. You actually have to type it out with the backslash
Mhm.
because it is adult material. So otherwise, it will not come up in just a general search. But you can get a collection of the first round. Dare, it's in Kindle, paperback, and audiobook form. We'd also like to thank 3D2U, our friends over there, making all sorts of cool gaming products, dice towers, dice trays, journals, all that sort of thing. Check them out at 3d2u.org. And also, of course, rentadventures.com. Our next tour is December 5th through the 9th down in New Orleans. Gaming and touring all sorts of cool things, culminating in a trip to the Renaissance Fair in Louisiana, which all your DMs will be from for the gaming part, and many people on the stream will be performing at the fair that weekend. So
Mhm.
be sure to check that out. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate all of you tuning in week after week. It's good to see you virtually here joining us. And some of you we have recently run into in person at various Renaissance fairs.
Yes.
So, please come up and say hi. And
Come up and say hi, and please introduce me as your Twitch mod
right, because
channel.
otherwise I am.
I don't know who some of you are in human form. Like, I don't know what you're gonna look like until you show up and you're like, oh, by the way, my name's Quid Kevin. I'm like, oh my god, okay. Now I know who you are.
Only if you want to.
Yeah.
If you like your
Otherwise,
anonymity, that's okay too.
maintain your
But
anonymous.
yeah, a lot of you we've run into now at Renaissance fairs, and some of you we've probably run into and didn't know it was you. So we meet a lot of people, thousands of people every year. So please um, remind us, be gentle with us, trying to remember who everyone is.
Mhm.
But we would love to come. We would love to say hi to you if you come to one of the fairs where we are performing. We'd love to say hello. So please do so. Thank you, Slumber Project. I will be in Louisiana. Mel will not
Yes.
because she'll still have the baby. But a bunch of
A
us
little too young to travel at that point,
at
but
that point, still a little young.
we'll work
Month
for
and a half
next.
old, a little young.
Yeah.
But I'll be down there. So please introduce yourself and say hi. Um, Beyond that, thank you very much, everyone. And I hope you have a great evening, and we'll see you again soon. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Oh wait, we have to do a cute pose.
Oh yeah.